Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We begin tonight with some breaking news. A fast-moving fire is threatening homes in Lakeside. It started around 2:30 this afternoon near El Monte Park. Evacuation orders have been issued, asking residents to leave immediately. And KPBS reporter Alexander Wynn joins us live from near the fire with the latest. Alex, what do we know so far?
Hey, Maya, we're live right here in Lakeside. As you can see, there's a fire behind me. We know that it's about 312 acres and has the potential to reach about 1,000 acres. There are about 10,000 crews fighting this blaze right now, both in the air and on the ground. El Monte Road is closed at Lake Jennings, and the area is sparsely populated. But CAL FIRE says there are homes here, and we have actually seen some residents evacuating with their horses. And some residents who are getting home right now are trying to get through to the police blockade and trying to get to their homes so they can evacuate, presumably their animals and their loved ones. And, you know, right now I am next to the media staging area, and you can see there are cars right now going through, and thinking that's probably cars, people being evacuated. I am right next to Captain Robert Johnson from CAL FIRE. Robert Johnson, what can you tell us about this fire?
Yeah, so like we mentioned, the fire is currently 312 acres in size. It's still growing. The fire is still burning at a moderate rate of spread, and there's 0% containment. We have multiple firefighters on scene, over 100 fire personnel on scene, as well as additional that have been requested to the incident. We have the full arsenal of resources, including the aerial assets as well as the ground crews.
And I know this area is very sparsely populated and very hilly. How is the terrain affecting firefighting?
Yeah, so the terrain is steep, rocky terrain. It does present its own set of challenges for firefighters. These aren't challenges that they're unprepared for. They do train in these conditions, but it does create challenges. One thing to note that the fire is currently topography driven. That means that the fire is being influenced by that steep, rocky terrain. Anytime we have fire burning in a slope, it's going to move a lot faster uphill than it would on level ground. So that's why we're seeing these large increases in acreage on this incident.
And I do know that, you know, some residents are coming home right now, and I do know that right now we have a blockade right now. But are some of them allowed to go through the blockade and get to their animals?
Yeah, so it's going to be on a case-by-case basis if they're able to go into that. The road closures are going to be set up through San Diego County sheriffs. We work in cooperation with them, but ultimately they're the ones doing the road closures as well as the evacuation orders and warnings. What we do recommend to residents and people that may be in the area is monitor that Genesis Protect app as well as San Diego County Sheriff's social media platforms. This is going to provide the most up-to-date information on road closures, evacuation orders, as well as warnings.
Okay, and then for all those people being evacuated, being told they have to evacuate, where can they go?
Yeah, so currently the evacuation point is going to be the Walmart off Los Coches Road, as well as large animals. We're currently working on establishing an evacuation site for large animals that will be a longer-term solution than just the Walmart parking lot.
All right, thank you so very much. That is Captain Robert Johnson from CAL FIRE. I do know that the San Diego Humane Society is here, and they are talking to residents and are helping residents with large animals to evacuate. For now, live in Lakeside, I'm Alexander Wynn, KPBS News.
A very hot weather pattern continues here, but there is relief in sight. we're also getting some relief at night, obviously, here with temperatures down into the 50s and low 60s for most of us, into areas like Borrego Springs, 72 for the overnight low. And we'll have some low clouds return. But for now, there are still heat advisories. Some of these are going to be ending this evening, but other areas in the lower elevations will hold on to those heat advisories into the day tomorrow. We'll talk about some big changes brewing in just a bit.
The city of San Diego's budget may not be a done deal after all. Today, Mayor Todd Gloria vetoed portions of the budget passed by the city council last week. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says Gloria wants to rein in spending.
Gloria announced Tuesday he would accept the city council's budget for libraries and rec centers, which will still be cut, but not by as much as the mayor had initially sought. Gloria used his line item veto powers as mayor to block roughly $5 million in spending by the council. That includes funding for community events and a handful of positions in city management. And Gloria said he's adjusting the council's revenue assumptions to be more realistic.
As mayor, I cannot in good conscience allow a budget built on shaky assumptions to move forward. Not when we're facing national economic uncertainty, global instability, and real threats to the federal and state funding we rely on.
The city's structural budget deficit of more than $300 million has been years, even decades in the making. Last November, voters narrowly rejected a sales tax increase that would have spared San Diego the budget cuts it's now facing. Exactly how to make those cuts has been a source of acrimony between the mayor and city council.
It is true that the council has the authority to override my veto, but I urge them to accept this compromise, a budget that restores essential services without overcommitting the city's finances.
The city council can override the mayor's vetoes with 6 votes. It has to do so by June 26th. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
San Diego is scaling back incentives for homeowners to build accessory dwelling units. The city council approved a package of reforms late last night. Here's Andrew Bowen again with the details.
Under the city's ADU bonus program, property owners can build a dozen or more units in the backyard of a single-family home if it meets certain conditions. If it's on a large lot, the home is near public transit, and a portion of the homes are set aside as affordable housing. The package of reforms would limit most properties to 4 ADUs. It would also impose new fees and parking requirements. Council President Joe LaCava voted for the restrictions.
As others have said, ADUs is part of our housing solution. It is not the only part of our solutions, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be right-sized. And I think we've seen very, very ugly and unfortunate examples.
I commend Neighbors for a Better San Diego.
The council's 5-4 vote came after more than 4 hours of public testimony, most of it in opposition to large ADU projects. Defenders of the ADU bonus program said it's producing badly needed housing, much of it affordable to the middle class.
When my 3-year-old daughter is an adult, I want her and everyone in her generation to have the opportunity to live in San Diego. That means we need to do all we can now to increase housing supply.
A letter from state housing officials last week threatened to block the reforms, which also have to be signed by Mayor Todd Gloria. The package did include some benefits for ADU builders, including an allowance for homeowners to sell backyard granny flats separately from their primary house. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
For the 5th day in a row, Israel and Iran are trading strikes with the civilians in flashpoint areas facing waves of attacks. President Donald Trump says that the ongoing conflict is what prompted him to leave the G7 summit early. Julia Benbrook has more from the White House.
President Donald Trump is back here at the White House after abruptly leaving the G7 summit in Canada. He was originally slated to stay longer, but as the conflict between Israel and Iran was intensifying, he told reporters at the summit, "I have to be back as soon as I can." The White House confirmed his plans for an early departure, writing, quote, "because of what's going on in the Middle East." On Air Force One, the president told reporters he's seeking, quote, "a real end to the conflict between Israel and Iran," arguing that would be preferable to a ceasefire, while also suggesting his patience for negotiations is wearing thin.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here? ceasefire and end.
So something that will be permanent.
Yeah, or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
The president met with members of his national security team in the Situation Room Tuesday, just hours after he returned. While there are conflicting reports on how developed Iran's nuclear capabilities are, Trump says he believes Iran was on the verge of obtaining a nuclear weapon when Israel struck last week. Israel has been pressing Trump to become more involved in its campaign to dismantle Iran's nuclear facilities, which top officials from the country have said would require American planes and weapons. At the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
The Department of Homeland Security is reversing course on guidance limiting immigration raids at farms, hotels, and restaurants. Yesterday, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials told field office leaders to continue raids at those work sites. ICE operations have put a chilling effect on some industries that rely on migrant workers. Our media partner KGTV spoke to a farmer in Imperial County. He says while there hasn't been enforcement on his property, he has heard of people not showing up for work out of fear of possible enforcement.
This is causing some confusion on a lot of farms and a lot of packing facilities, and some employees are choosing not to show up to work in the fear they might be the next raids. If we're going to keep the American public fed with cheap, abundant, safe, affordable food, we need agriculture employees.
He says he believes the real solution is creating immigration reform to combat the worker shortage that already existed. The news media's status as a check on the government is under attack, and in some cases, it's unfriendly fire from within news outlets. Longtime opinion editor Laura Castañeda says she is a casualty. She says the San Diego Union Tribune fired her last week shortly after managers nixed an editorial on the ICE raids in Los Angeles, and she spoke with KPBS's Amita Sharma.
Laura, describe the circumstances that precipitated your firing last week from the Union Tribune.
Well, this was not the only incident, but we wrote an editorial, the editorial board, on the ICE raids and the protests, the peaceful protests in Los Angeles that turned violent. That editorial was pulled by the publisher, Ron Hasse, and told one of our team members that it was one-sided and they were not going to publish that piece.
What is your response to the idea that the piece was one-sided?
There is absolutely no way that I can agree with that. I work with two very professional journalists. We talked about the piece. The piece was written by the three of us, and we stand by every single thing that was in that editorial. There was no way it was one-sided. What's the other side?
How would you characterize the pulling of the editorial on the ICE raids in LA and the elimination of your job hours later?
The two go hand in hand no matter what they say. You cannot kill an editorial at 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and then by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I can't get into my computer or my email. Nobody told me what was going on. I think I'm calling IT, and I get a call back from the number 2 guy in the company telling me that my position has been eliminated, and I point blank asked him if this was connected to that editorial not being published, and I told him that I felt that was censorship, and he insisted that that one had nothing to do with the other. I don't believe it.
Were there any events before last week that signaled that management at the Union Tribune had changed course on its editorial policy?
Absolutely. One of the things that they did is they destroyed our Community Voices project. We had a project where we handpicked a lot of community leaders from all walks of life, different age groups, genders, races, religions, and they were writing about a variety of topics. And all of a sudden, most of them people of color and women, their voices were shut down and they would not run their pieces. They also pulled an opinion piece that a student wrote at UCSD over those protests that were going on.
And what were those protests about at UCSD?
Well, it was when the war started between Israel and Palestine, and one of the students wrote and we tried to get the other side, obviously, but trying to find the students from the Palestine group was difficult because their student group had been disbanded on campus. So it was two very, different pieces, and they didn't want to hear it. We've been told not to run pieces that have the word genocide, to stick to local issues. We're not going to write about this. We're not going to write about that. Well, you know what? You can't set the agenda all the time. We work in editorial and opinion. That's the job that we were hired to do. And to silence all of these voices is ridiculous, because that's exactly what that project was meant to do.
So journalists and news outlets these days are scared to report and write about topics or issues, even if they're true. Do you see what happened with you at the Union Tribune as part of this?
Yes, I do, and it is ridiculous, because that we are supposed to be the eyes and the ears of the community. See something, say something, but they are trying to set the agenda. They are trying to control the narrative, and that's not journalism. There's two sides to every story, not one. And the rich people who own these papers and television stations across the country should not be setting the agenda.
Why did you decide to speak out today?
Because it's not right. I have been retaliated against because I brought two claims to the Human Resources Department. Women at the San Diego Union Tribune are not treated fairly. I'm a brown woman over the age of 40, and these guys who own this paper and the 3 male supervisors that I have reported to don't like it, and they want to silence me, and I will not stay silent, and I hope that other journalists will speak up as well.
What's next for you?
I've had a migraine for 2 days. I don't remember when was the last time I ate, and I feel sick to my stomach over this whole thing. But I am going to take a deep breath and try to figure out what my next step is. I know that I will only get involved in a situation that allows me to tell the truth, because the truth matters. And I will always be a storyteller. I will always mentor journalists. I'm also the president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, San Diego Tijuana chapter. So I hope to set a good example about journalism and where we are from here.
And KPBS reached out to the San Diego Union Tribune for comment on Castañeda's departure from the paper. A representative from the owner of the UT Media News Group, executive editor Frank Pine, issued the following statement. The decision to eliminate Castañeda's position had nothing to do with any editorial, and in fact, she did not write the draft editorial she falsely claims led to her dismissal. The Imperial County Board of Supervisors appointed a new CEO last week. KPBS Imperial Valley reporter Corey Suzuki says not everyone agreed on the choice.
In April, the Board of Supervisors dismissed the county's former top administrator, Miguel Figueroa. They said he'd been under investigation, but wouldn't say why. Now, the board has appointed a new CEO, Kathleen Lang. Lang is an administrator at a national private healthcare company that provides Medi-Cal services in the valley. The decision wasn't unanimous. 2 supervisors voted against Lang's appointment, largely because Lang will receive a significantly higher salary than Figueroa. Supervisor Martha Cardenas-Singh says she sees a trend in the board's decisions to approve large raises.
And that is the reason. It is not about Dr. Lang. It's about how we decided a 33% increase to a CEO.
The decision also comes ahead of the county's public budget hearings, which are set to take place in August. Supervisor Peggy Price supported Lang's appointment, but warned that the county will face challenging decisions in the coming months.
I welcome you. I also am going to lean on you very hard, because there's a lot of work to be done here.
Lang will officially start at the end of June. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
Auto industry observers see car prices holding steady despite tariffs. How long will the trends last? Well, Karen Kaifa has a look at what's driving the numbers.
A drop in auto sales dragged down overall retail sales last month, according to a government report that was released on Tuesday. And that sluggish demand may be helping to keep auto prices down for now, but analysts say maybe not too long. Even with 25% tariffs on all imported cars and auto parts implemented by the Trump White House for the last 2 months, auto prices haven't skyrocketed the way some analysts expected.
We have a lot of information about what will happen, what could happen, what should happen, but it's not materialized on the dealer's lots because we still have millions of vehicles in inventory.
Consumer caution amid economic uncertainty could be keeping prices in neutral for now. Car buying research site Edmunds.com found the price paid for new cars in May dipped 0.2% on average compared to April. That's after auto sales climbed in March as some consumers sought to get ahead of tariffs. Commerce Department data showed car and auto parts sales slid 3.5% in May from April, a big part of an overall pullback in retail sales.
By having fewer consumers say, let's go dealership right here, right now, buy a car, it does prolong how long it will take before the tariffed cars show up.
But David Tinsley of the Bank of America Institute says their research predicts tariffs will boost prices higher within months.
Bank of America Global Research does expect, supply chain problems on cars to continue, and that will, I think, over time, put upward pressure on prices. It will just take some months to come through, I think.
Ivan Drury, director of insights at car buying research site Edmunds.com, says automakers may wait until the new model year, typically early fall, to pass along added costs.
It's not one of those things where you don't expect to see price changes, especially when you go from 25 to 26. It kind of masks that a little bit.
Edmunds said back in March that automakers had between a 30 and 77-day supply of cars on the lots, depending on the manufacturer. But even with slower sales, those pre-tariff supplies will be dwindling soon. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Well, the heat continues here across most of the region. It's still sizzling at midweek, especially for those of you in the deserts and in inland locations. But we are going to turn a lot cooler as the weekends. This weekend's going to be very different out there. And the marine layer is bringing, sometimes we call it June gloom or May gray, the month before this, with those low clouds in the morning along the coast, but then the cloud layer vanishes and returning brighter into the afternoons. Tonight, increasing clouds yet again, 62 degrees for your low in the metro. And here are the heat advisories. Now, some of these are going to be peeling off of the map this evening. But there will be a new round or an extension of some of these heat advisories for some of the hotter locations into the low elevations in the deserts and so forth for tomorrow as well. So another hot day for Wednesday, just not quite as hot, a smidge less hot than it was on Tuesday for areas a little bit inland from the coast. Regardless, it's going to be a hot time here, and you can see the contrast here from around 71 into San Diego to 85 still in El Cajon, Escondido 88, Ramona 94, Borrego Springs 113 degrees still for Wednesday. So the heat is still on, but look at this, a big pattern change, and believe it or not, as summer officially begins, this is not a misprint. There will be a few areas with just a hint of some snow. So temperatures dropping below historical averages, and snow levels drop all the way down to around 6,000 feet in some parts of the northern Rockies for the beginning of summer. There will be a fire risk here in the Great Basin as well, off to our northeast. But as we take a look at the coastal forecast here, we have a little bit of a drop in temperature. 77 Wednesday, kind of gradually stabilizing at 74 Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Mostly sunny and pleasant most days. Inland areas here, we're going from 86, still warm Wednesday, back to 75 on Saturday. Enjoy that. In the mountains here, we're getting nice and cool by Saturday, down to 67. Good deal of sunshine out there. And in the deserts here, we really have a long way to go before we really find comfort. 113 Wednesday, 110 Thursday, 106 Friday. Double digits on Saturday, and still hot on Sunday, but not nearly as hot as we have been. For AccuWeather, I'm Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
An update now on some breaking news out of Lakeside, where a growing wildfire has forced people to evacuate. It started around 2:30 this afternoon near El Monte Park. CAL FIRE reports at this hour the fire has burned 312 acres with the potential to spread to 1,000 acres. Right now it is 0% contained. Over 100 firefighters on the ground and in the air are battling the flames. A temporary evacuation point is set up at the Walmart on Camino Canada in El Cajon. We will continue to monitor this fire, of course, and we will provide you updates on our website at kpbs.org. As San Diegans use creative expression to recent government actions, KPBS arts reporter Julia Dixon-Evans explores how protest art connects today's movements to a long history of resistance.
Art as protest takes many forms, from public art installations and underground zines to parody, created to make sense of the world and share a message. Arzu Ozkal is professor of graphic design at San Diego State University. She says protest signs are public, visual manifestations of real-time dissent.
Everybody is an artist. So those are all like journal pages of the United States right now. They're so personal, they're quick, they're witty, also serious.
Familiar imagery and design can inform protest art, like a Trojan horse at the border or a modified No Kings street sign, and even flags or the emblematic red MAGA hat. On Saturday, local artist Cindy Zimmerman's mobile monument goes on view at the downtown library. It displays and broadcasts all the words removed from government websites this year.
Monuments are usually erected by city officials. They represent one way of history. They see as truth. So it's brilliant that somebody else uses, or Cindy uses this as a way to challenge that narrative.
The issues may have changed, but the urgency to respond through art is nothing new. The origins of art as a profession and as subversion are deeply connected to power structures, like monarchies and the church and their propaganda.
The artists start saying, hey, you're oppressing my voice. So I'm going to do things that people can understand what my community is struggling with or what I believe.
In history and today, people create art to serve and challenge power.
Whenever we're not allowed to say what we want to say, humanity finds ways, subversive ways to communicate, because we have the urge to communicate, need to communicate.
Julia Dixon-Evans, KPBS News.
You can find photos of local protest art along with tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.